Hey guys, look! They put me in the game!
Get 5 coffins ready.
Kujira is a unique guardian in SMITE who focuses on dealing light CC and medium damage over very long durations, all while reducing the damage he takes from enemies to ensure he can continue applying that CC and damage. So in turn, no matter where you play Kujira, you're going to want a god in another role who brings a little more significant CC to the table, usually in the jungle and support roles. This means he's good in both support and solo lane roles himself, and even a bit in the jungle, although this guide will of course focus more on Kujira and the solo lane role since that's more what he's geared towards. Build-wise, this should give you a look-see at just how weird Kujira will get. He's more of a basic attack-based guardian, and you'll see why in a moment. You can absolutely go a more traditional tank build on him, but he really does benefit heavily from attack speed, so you want it somewhere in your build whenever you can. Relics-wise, Kujira is a very in-your-face guardian, but lacks inherent CC immunity, so that leaves him in a bit of a pickle relics-wise. Blink and beads is what I would say sets you up best in the solo lane, with beads of course being replaced with teleport against laners who can easily force you out, such as poke-oriented warriors and mages. In the support role, you of course want to keep the blink, but the second relic could be something like a shell or my personal choice, horrific emblem. Shard-wise, this is a new one for a guardian. I would say wing shard is the way to go. Again, this reliance on attack speed will make much more sense once you see the character in his entirety. Recipe-wise, just sturdy stew of course, what else? You'll see why we're skipping out on basic attack proccing items such as golden gooseberries, now actually. Kujira has very unique basic attacks. He basic attacks in an entire area around himself, but these basic attacks won't activate item effects, hence why things like golden gooseberries, death toll, and so on aren't bought on him, because even though those items would be insane, he literally can't use them. Additionally, any protections you buy get converted into basic attack damage, so Kujira deals more damage with basic attacks as he gets tankier. Then finally, any attack speed you buy gets converted into what's known as haste, which is a unique stat that reduces the basic attack movement speed penalty. So essentially, while you basic attack with a bit of haste on you, you move faster than you otherwise normally would. So in short, the more attack speed you have, the less basic attacking slows you down, which, trust me, is very important on this god. Also of note, it converts 30% of your bonus protections into basic attack damage, but you still get the full amount of protections from items that you paid for, with the bonus of basic attack damage on top. This is part of why damage items aren't strictly necessary on Kujira, since you deal more damage when you build more tanky, and if you've seen Kujira's base damage and power scaling, you know building damage items wouldn't do much anyways. As for the attack speed, you actually get none of the attack speed you pay for from items. Messed up, right? Kujira has a strict base attack speed and won't increase his attack speed when you buy or gain attack speed. It'll just be converted into that haste stat. But stay with me here, it's very vital to his game plan, so be sure to get attack speed from items whenever you can. Or for instance, here's a fun interaction, getting attack speed from the purple totem for example. As you can guess, we're far from done with talking about Kujira's basic attacks, but for now let's touch on his actual passive. Enemies who inflict Kujira with hard CC are cursed, this curse lasting for 5 seconds. The curse itself does nothing, but enemies who hit Kujira with multiple forms of hard CC will have the duration of the curse refreshed and another stack of the curse added to them, and of course, you interact with this curse via some of Kujira's abilities. Unfortunately for my signature transitions, Kujira's first ability does not interact with the curse. Kujira increases the AoE of his basic attacks and reduces the basic attack movement speed penalty for 5 seconds. During this time, every time he successfully damages an enemy with his basic attacks, he gains protections, up to a total of 60 protections. So yes, in turn, your basic attacks begin dealing more damage as you land them, with this ability active thanks to his passive. This means it's his main source of damage when it comes to just about anything, so herein lies the reliance on upping his basic attack damage and reducing the basic attack movement speed penalty. You use this to clear waves, take trades with enemy lane opponents, and just generally harass people with damage, all while making yourself tankier thanks to the bonus protections and therefore more difficult to punish. It's exceptional damage over time and begins the trend of Kujira being a more sustain-oriented CC guardian than doing one big wham-bam CC ability like an Athena or a Mir. Keeping that trend going is Kujira's second ability. Kujira fires a cone AoE in front of himself, damaging and slowing all enemies hit, as well as applying his passive curse. Enemies who are already cursed, however, will be slowed for more and, of course, have the curse reapplied and amplified. Bars. The party trick here is that landing basic attacks will reduce the cooldown of this ability. Basic attacks on gods reducing the cooldown by a second per basic attack and 0.1 seconds when hitting minions. So, even though the CC here isn't incredible, Kujira can keep applying and reapplying this slow over and over. Of course, the fact that cursed enemies get a bonus slow means that 2, 1 basic attacks, then 2 again for an enhanced slow is the main combo. This helps cement Kujira as a solo laner, as all this spam is helped if you have access to the blue buff. All of that mixed with the damage of his basic attacks once you get your build really going is what makes Kujira very hard to deal with. It makes it a lot more clear about why he's more of a solo laner and not a support, since all of this functions far better in the solo lane than in the dual lane. Well, what I should say is that this is good in the laning phase for a support, but once you start rotating around the map, you're going to feel far less useful than a more traditional guardian like Athena. One ability that keeps Kujira in the running CC-wise though is his third ability. Kujira winds up and deals damage to all enemies immediately in front of him, then pushes forward, stunning, damaging, and pushing all enemies he comes in contact with. In short, it's essentially Hercules' push, just easier to hit, and it's a big reason for buying Blink on Kujira. This ability has no interactions with Kujira's passive or anything, so you probably know everything you need to know already. In the early and mid game, you mostly just use this ability for damage or to knock enemies out of their channeled abilities, and of course, it's stellar for peel if you find yourself in the support role. And naturally, use your slows and try to get yourself in a position to push enemies into your tower or otherwise cheese them into a bad situation with the push. Then in the late game, you really want to save this ability and try to push enemy backliners into your team for easy kills. Just like with the Hercules or a tier push, if you push an enemy squishy into your team late game, they're done, so you really want to hold on to this ability in reserve later on in the match until you know you can really have a big impact with it. Blink, of course, is the best tool to get this done, especially considering this ability has a little wind up on it, but luckily, Kujira can also use his ultimate to set up for this ability. Kujira gains basic attack range and damage, and begins emitting 2 AoEs around himself. Enemies in the inner area take increased damage from all sources, and enemies in the greater AoE begin taking stacks of time dilation CC every second, up to 40%. And that's the same sort of CC Oleron has on his ultimate. This means that enemies in the greater area have literally everything slowed. Ability animation time, movement speed, attack speed, everything. It seems complicated, since at first you may get the impression that you have to try and position yourself so that enemies take one of the 2 areas depending on what's best. But for the most part, this is an ultimate that happens for you. You just have to play Kujira the same way you've been playing thus far, and the ultimate does the rest. Focusing on stacking your slows on enemies while dealing damage with your basic attacks, only this time enemies are taking far more damage from your abilities and basic attacks, and of course any allies who follow up off of you are doing more damage as well. Still though, you certainly want to try and snag enemies in the time dilation at times too. This is mostly during chase downs as well as when you're trying to peel for your allies. When chasing down, lay back a little and try to keep enemies inside the time dilation area, remembering to back off a little bit once you get more slowed. And of course, once they're fully slowed, walk in or dash in with your 3 to close the gap to get them in a closer AoE, and then your team can deal increased damage to a time dilated target. Same idea goes for using this ability for peel. Obviously when peeling, you want to focus on using your 2's more immediate slow and of course your 3's push, but once those abilities are on cooldown, you can sit back and let this time dilate any enemies who are trying to chase you and your team down. Generally speaking though, this is more of an ability you use and then forget about it though, since the area is so large and the time dilation takes so long to kick in. So it's generally best just to use this ability at the start of a fight, focus on using your core kit, then once your main abilities are down, focus on utilizing your ultimate. Here, I'll show you what I mean with some combos. 2, 1, basic attacks. 2 again. 2, 3, 1, basic attacks. 2 again. 3, ult, 1, 2, basic attacks. 2. Blink, 3, 2, 1, basic attacks. 2. Ult, 2, 3, 1, basic attacks. 2. Ult, blink, 3, 2, 1, basic attacks. 2. On targets who heavily outrange you, blink, ult, 2, 3, 1, basic attacks. 2. For ability leveling, you want your 2 at level 1. Remember, basic attacking all those jungle monsters at the start of the match reduces the cooldown of this ability, so you can use it twice. Then, your 1 at level 2, and try to get to the wave and start slapping it ASAP with your 1 to establish lane presence. Then, your 3 at level 3. From there, well, Kujira is brand new, so there's still debate. But I'd say maxing your 1, then your 2, then your 3, holding off on leveling your ultimate until your first and second abilities are maxed, since they work so well together and are the core of Kujira's pressure. Maxing your 2 over your 1 isn't bad for damage, but if you're laning, I find that the protections you get when you max the 1 is just too much to give up. It makes it so much harder to fight him. So that's Bake Kujira, a weird but very cool god whose weirdness slowly transforms into ease of use once you're more comfortable with the character. His strengths and weaknesses are as clear as day though. He's wonderful against medium to close range enemies, but if you get against a team who can poke or burst, or do both, Kujira can struggle. Thoth and Kukulkan come to mind as characters Kujira can really struggle to get a leg up against thanks to his stubby range. And luckily, mage solos have been nerfed, but if they maintain any semblance of relevance, Kujira is in a bad spot against them, because he really can't play the way he wants to against ranged characters. He focuses on getting in people's faces and slowing them to death while chipping away with his basic attacks. And he requires the use of blink to get into the enemy backline to get that done. Not a problem in the late game, but if he finds himself against an enemy mage solo, he won't have a good time. So with Kujira, all of his difficulty comes from knowing when to pick your battles. Try to avoid one-on-one fights against gods with too much range and/or burst, and only ever fully commit to fights when you have access to all of your toolset. As in, only dive into the enemy backline when you have access to blink, because while your chase down is impeccable as Kujira, he has absolutely no burst damage to speak of, so one bad decision could leave you in a situation where you dealt no damage and barely CC'd anybody and still wound up dead. All that said though, as I mentioned, once you get your foot in the door with Kujira, he's one of the easiest gods in the game. So once you get accustomed to what gods you can and cannot dive with Kujira, as well as which gods you can and cannot dominate in lane, side note, you beat almost every warrior, you're in for a very easy and very effective time. Again, while he lacks burst, his damage overall is absolutely formidable. That mixed with the bonus damage from his ultimate and the damage reduction on his 2 makes him a rare case of a tank in Season 10 who can actually trade with backliners in the late game. So Kujira actually doubles as a lane dominator and a backline suppressor all in one. Kinda like Season 2's Xing Chen and Bellona. So if you pick your battles well, you have a god who's easy to play and effective at all stages of the game. That's all I have on Bake Kujira for now. Thanks for watching.